As of yesterday, I am 365 days in quarantine, or, lockdown, or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't mean I haven't met a single person for the whole year. Obviously, I even had a vacation in Spain. Okay, yes, maybe it wasn't a vacation, but instead it was my grandfather's burial at sea. But the point is that I left the country at one point during the summer. There were phases when the rules were tighter, there were phases when the rules were looser. I always kept to a very solitary approach to it. But ultimately, what's been going on for like a year now is that a huge chunk of my social life has just not been there. No meetups, no bars, no parties, no weekly TTRPG hangouts where you play games with people. Basically, it's no meeting new people and no hanging out with groups of friends. That was my year for the most part. During the summer, there were a few exceptions to that. We had some rounds that we played, but all of that got tightened up very quickly. The friends I have been spending time with, I've been extremely selective about. There's a lot of people I would have loved to spend time with where it wasn't possible because we have to be careful. And the thing is, this is not a way for anyone to live, but especially not a young person. All of my entire life, I was told that it was gonna be in my 20s when I was gonna have the most freedom and I'd be able to spend time with friends, and then basically the day I hit my 30s, I will just drop dead immediately. Now, the thing I hear from a lot of my friends that are a bit older than me and in their 30s is that their 30s are just better than their 20s in every conceivable respect, but that's neither here nor there. Apparently it's like being young, but without all the bullshit of being young, because you're an adult. The fact of the matter remains, I have spent an entire year of my youth, one of the very important and valuable years that I was told I'd be able to enjoy the most freedom and gain the most experiences locked up in my apartment. And this is true for a lot of young people all over the world, even in America, where, the general idea seems to have been to not really give a shit about the pandemic, except for, some individuals who didn't want to become super spreaders. And I feel like this is probably hitting the very young youngsters, like the 19 and 20-year-olds, especially hard right now, because they're supposed to be entering into this mystical new phase of their lives and they haven't experienced any of it yet, and it's just being denied to them. You remember being 20, you remember how impatient you were. This shit has to be fucking torture for them. But of course, there's a reason that we did this, and that we continue to do this. We sacrificed this year to stop the spread of the pandemic. We saved this very valuable year to save millions of old people from dying. We are saving them, the people who have already had all of their freedom, from an earlier grave than they otherwise would have encountered. And personally, I think that's a very good reason, to be honest. I think it's a very good thing to do something so that other people don't die. Just fundamentally, the moral arithmetic of that checks out. But a few weeks ago, I had a conversation that stuck with me, with a very, very good friend of mine on my German language podcast, and the topic of that conversation, what was he, a sociologist, called reciprocity. Basically, the question that was posed in a very neutral, non-judgmental, almost academic type context, though let's not elevate the podcast too much, was why should we do this when they wouldn't do the same thing for us? Now, you might immediately think that this is a complete hypothetical, but if you really think about it, it kinda isn't. When we talk about old people in this very day and age, this current year 2021, we're talking about baby boomers. And when we're talking about baby boomers, we mean the exact same baby boomers who, as a generation, massively accelerated the horrific effects of climate change instead of, doing literally anything about it. They also ravaged the economy by implementing their neoliberal and neoconservative economic policies, for which they've already fucked us by making their middle age much better than it would have been at the expense of our youths. They are in power now. They, as a generation, hold pretty much all of the political power that you can have pretty much all over the world. And still, they're just doing the barest of minimums in terms of climate change. Not only that, they're also still pumping the most polluting industries in the world just full of subsidies. And guess when that bill is going to come due for humanity as a species? It's when the people who are in their teens and 20s now will be in their 17s and 80s is when the bill is gonna come due in full force. I mean, to be fair, you know, the bill is already going to come due throughout all of our adult lives, basically at the point at which the last boomer has died of natural causes. You know, as freak weather events continue to destroy people's livelihoods and more individuals are displaced from entire areas of the world that have become uninhabitable. But if projections hold up with the same degree of accuracy that they have thus far, which, let me tell you, is extremely accurate, the time when we are old is going to be the time when shit really hits the fan. Millions of climate refugees, entire countries that were once vibrant economies, completely devoid of people, utterly uninhabitable, essential infrastructure destroyed by unprecedented magnitude natural catastrophes pretty much once a month. Not to mention the domino effect, destroying the ecological infrastructure that we as a species rely on, tipping it over like dominoes, potentially leading to the worst mass extinction event of all time. Jungles will turn into deserts, billions of people will starve to death, and our entire economic apparatus is going to be focused solely on keeping us alive for one more day. At that point, looking back at the coronavirus pandemic as a major problem is going to be like being in early 2020 when coronavirus has just imposed all of its fucking quarantines and looking back to the Joker movie as a major societal problem. The point is, we do not need to consider whether boomers would sacrifice even a second of their own lives to save us in our old age in the hypothetical. That's a very real dilemma, and they have already decided what they're going to do about it. And what they're going to do about it is just let every single one of us drown in a storm flood as a geriatric old person that can't even properly keep their anus closed anymore so they can go to Olive Garden once a week. And now they're the ones who are getting the vaccines first. They're the ones who are immediately going to get on airplanes to fly on expensive vacations or crowd back into big cruise ships that spew out the kinds of chemicals that make my lungs darker than as if I was a chain smoker, because I do live in one of them cities where they let the cruise ships way into the harbor, and it's very bad for the air. So there's no reciprocity. We are actively sacrificing an essential part of our youths to save the lives of an older generation that is explicitly doing the opposite of that with our old age. Boomers are not gonna change their mind about climate change after the pandemic. They just want everything to go back to normal. They will continue to destroy the environment and our old age, just as they have spent their entire lives destroying the economy and thereby our youths. And if you're angry about that, you should be. It's fucking infuriating. But, and you knew this was coming if you watch this channel every once in a while, it's not as easy as just hating your grandma now for ruining your life. Because, here's the thing, we can't just hold all individuals in a certain demographic group responsible for the actions of a group of individuals within that demographic. That's just not how justice works. And the first people who organized the big protests way back in the day going, hang on a second, if we continue doing this, the Earth's gonna be fucked. That was boomers. Also, a lot of the people who fought their entire lives to protect the working and middle classes from the predations of modern aristocrats were also boomers. They risked life and limb. They made huge sacrifices in order to fight this fight for us. Bernie Sanders is a boomer. A whole bunch of climate scientists that are still warning vehemently about the effects of climate change today at every opportunity are boomers. And let's be honest, the majority of boomers that are, just around, they don't really like the idea of climate change very much. If you offer them the choice between a policy that's good for the environment and a policy that's bad for the environment, they're gonna probably pick the policy that's good for the environment. unless they've been told some bullshit, because they don't really care enough to really put an effort in. They wouldn't do it out of malice though. Most boomers that exist want the best for young people. So is it moral to punish them for that with what would essentially be a death sentence? Or does the moral imperative of, you know, sacrificing this year for the people that did fight for us, that are also now old, not overrule that desire to sort of get revenge on people who have committed crimes that have already been committed? I don't have any definitive answers to these questions, although personally, of course, I do believe that, you know, isolating yourself and stopping the spread from the pandemic as well as you can do is a good thing. That's a very honorable thing, and you should be doing it. That is why I've done it for the past year. It's definitely very clear to me that groups of people cannot be punished for crimes that subgroups of those people have committed. At the same time, the subgroups who have committed those crimes are, of course, benefiting from you sacrificing your youth at this precise point in time. There is, especially in this context, no way of punishing only the guilty. And I think that's the most infuriating part of all of this. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe, share this to your relevant communities, but do not spam them. Consider supporting me on Patreon or Subscribestar, buying some of my merchandise or my short story collection. There we go. And in that spirit, I just want to make clear that this video is not a call for you to stop, you know, giving a shit about the pandemic. You're not supposed to go out into the park and, like, cough on old people. I think that would actually be a very, very bad thing to do. Very immoral, very dishonorable thing to do. And also, you know, criminal in most cases. But just consider that you have just sacrificed a year of your youth for this, and maybe you really, really deserve something in return. And see you around, cunts.